call this public hearing to order. Topic is comprehensive plan amendment to add a property to the historic designated landmarks registry at 260 South First Street. And now I'll turn it over to our associate planner, Jenny Dimshow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's now 6:47 and the public hearing is now open. This is a legislative land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is amendment to the St. Helens Comprehensive Plan, and the applicant is Ruby Feather. Because legislative proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, the council has to take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the council wish to declare a conflict of interest or bias in this matter? Does anyone from the audience want to object to the ability of a counselor to make a fair decision? Great. Rules for the conduct of the hearing are set forth on the handout on the table in the back of the room. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as followed. Required statements, staff report, the applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, those opposed, rebuttal by the applicant, the close of the hearing, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. The following statements are to be made at the commencement of the hearing. The standard for a decision by the council shall be based on St. Helens Municipal Code 1720-120, Section 1, Standards for a Legislative Decision. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards this applicable standard previously listed or other such criteria in the code or plan in which the person believes applies to the decision. All right. A little bit shorter this one, so we can get into it. So Kathy, is it possible to pull up the photos attachment at the end of the staff report? Would be awesome. A little far. The first one would be great. Cool. That one, great. So for this staff report, I got to do a little history research and coordination with the Museum Association, who's in the audience. We have never added a historic landmark to our landmarks list. This is the first time since the list was created in the early 80s. So we kind of had to refresh our memories on how that process worked. We were looking at criteria that really had never been looked at before. So this whole process was kind of new for both Jacob and I. But backing up, the main reason that the applicant is applying for this is because the Riverfront District, in which the property is zoned, doesn't allow residential units on the bottom floor. And as we know, this is a residential unit. So in order for them to kind of maintain that as a use, they're applying for this historic designation. So that was kind of the carrot, as Jacob would call it, rather than the stick approach for historic preservation, that in order to, preserve homes, we added that as a way to keep that non-conforming use. So that's why they're applying, and I believe the applicant will talk a little bit more about that, so I won't chat about that. But does everyone know where this property is on South 2nd? It's just up the hill between the commercial units. You can kind of walk through an alley, or you can access it by going kind of through the area near the old school by vehicle. So in my research, this is a photo of the old Henry Knighton house in 1851, I believe is what that says. And the reason this is pictured here is because this property that we're talking about today, this home, was actually on the Henry Knighton farm property. So that outbuilding is where the museum believes this structure that we're talking about today was located. So one of the criteria for approving an addition to a designated landmarks list is that it has local significance in our history. And so I thought it was important to kind of date back to the actual property itself. I would say the founder of St. Helens is about as significant as you can get. It was actually located on his farm property. So if you scroll down a little bit, so this is another photo. So the Henry Knighton house moved 2 times. So this is the second location. So you can see on that first photo, it was facing First Street, and then it got rotated and moved slightly. The blue circle is where that farm outbuilding, we think where that farm building was kind of deconstructed. And then, I'm not sure what the red represents. That's maybe the original location of the Knighton house. In any case, this is,
That's the
The
Italian.
that is,
Italian-
oh, it's
that's the house.
in that photo. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You
You
can
can
barely
see
see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just see the
Yeah.
front.
So then scroll.
Moved, it's facing.
Right, so scrolling down, this is 1909. This is the oldest photo that we have of the structure at this time. It's circled in red there. And then this is it in the 20s from the plaza itself. I think that still shows the original porch facing it. So I think this is a good time to kind of talk about alterations. So when the historic district was formed in the 80s, it nominated each structure and talked about whether there were any alterations to the building. And this structure remained relatively untouched. The only features of the home that were changed were the siding, the porch railing, the handrail, and the stairs. And that's because they relocated the access to face the vehicular access rather than this like pedestrian alleyway. So over time, First Street grew with commercial development, and so it made sense to just kind of reorient the house towards its approach. So I think
Well, this house has moved a lot.
the Knighton house,
Outlined,
yeah,
Turned,
Yeah.
moved, and Knighton house has been moved
Yeah.
3 times.
yeah.
Wow.
So scrolling down, so this home, just to clarify, this home hasn't actually moved, just the porch orientation changed.
Oh, just the porch.
Just the stairs they used to be facing
Okay.
like the square, and now they're facing towards.
So it's in its original location, which is important. It hasn't been altered significantly. It's in its original location, and it's had minor alterations since the 80s. Here's another photo from the side. I wanted to do this attachment because once they become a historic designated landmark, any alterations to the exterior, we review for compliance. So having a record of all of these old photos and all of the facades is important for future review of any alterations that they may apply for. There's 67. And then the last photo. So I think this is important because this structure was used in the 2008 Twilight film as the location of a bookstore. Although pop culture references are not necessarily a criteria, I still think that there's, evidence to support that, preserving this pop culture reference is important for our tourism and economic development of the downtown. And so I just thought that was important to include. So that's kind of the background of the home and the property itself. So what is our criteria? What are we basing our decision on? So there's kind of a couple things I'll go through. So in order to include a landmark on the register, we have to find that the historic resource is over 50 years of age. We know that this structure is at least over 113, so there's no problem there. It's a very old structure. And then we have to find that it possesses sufficient historic integrity. And a historic integrity is defined as the quality of wholeness of the historic location, check, we know it's in the right spot, design, setting, materials, workmanship, and feeling or association of a resource as opposed to its physical condition. So because we know this structure's been relatively unaltered, I think it's fair to say that it possesses historic integrity, or staff feels that. And then the last criteria is that it's associated with events that have made significant contribution to patterns of local, state, or national history. And I think I kind of made that case, it's on the Henry Knighton property. And then also the architectural style is one of the few remaining in our district, the Italianate cottage style that the nomination talks about. The only other one was the Dillard home, which was destroyed. So this remains kind of the last model of that style type. So staff believes that it meets all of the criteria for adding it to the district as a landmark, and the planning commission also unanimously approved or recommended approval of that. I don't know if there are any questions about this. It does require that we change a map in our comp plan, so Jacob has been working on digitizing that map because it was done in the 80s and there were some inconsistencies with the map. And I know Ginny is working with the youth council to take photos of those so that we can even make it more appealing and easy to read. Are there any questions about this?
I just have one detailed one regarding, not the exterior, but the interior. What's the requirements and any alterations of the interior setting?
So like moving forward, if they were to be adopted,
Yes.
I guess either way. We don't look at interior work.
Okay, thanks.
There may be federal programs that they could apply for that might, but the city's local stuff doesn't. So, all right, we can move on to the applicant's presentation. Chat?
Okay. Don't really have a presentation. I'm, not a good public speaker at all. You guys terrify me. Which is funny, because I work in a restaurant and I talk to people all day long, as you know. So, yeah, she covered kind of all the history stuff, which is funny, because I didn't know any of the history of this house when I bought it. I actually bought it at an auction last summer, and I work over at Dockside, and I lived over on 5th Street, and I just walked by it, like, almost every day going to work, and I was like, why not? And then, we got it, and it needs a lot of work, a lot of love, for sure. But I'm definitely really excited about trying to get it all fixed up, and I would love to live in it. So that's kind of, like she said, the biggest kind of motivation to get it on the list. To kind of answer your question that you asked as far as the interior goes, I know that we are not required to get the go-ahead to remodel the inside type stuff, but we are not renovating it to the point of changing. We are restoring. That is definitely our goal in that. It's got, you should see the inside. It looks like hell right now, but it's going to be beautiful. It has, all original floors. It's got the, almost 13-foot high ceiling. It's going to be awesome. But I want to make it pretty again, and I don't know. Do you have questions for me?
I was just gonna ask you, was the story with the basement, I think that you were talking about, livability?
Oh, she was just saying, so the reason why I initially applied to do this is because it's business district technically right now?
Yeah, the Riverfront District doesn't allow residential on the bottom floor unless you're a designated historic landmark.
And there is no, it's only one story.
Yeah.
So there is only one floor to
Sure,
live
so you
on.
had to live there.
Unless I wanna go live in the, dirt floor.
The idea is that these commercial buildings with residential above are allowed.
No, I'm not trying to live in the basement.
Yeah.
Well, if you scroll back one more, that sure is a beautiful 1976, that sure is beautiful right there.
That's what I want it
Yeah.
to look like again. And I know that there are some things that are gonna need to be done, like I know the siding was replaced. It probably will have to be again because it is old and probably has asbestos in it. So I don't know exactly how that's gonna go about as far as approval of what kind of siding and that
For
kind
a
of stuff.
permit to alter it,
Yeah.
and we would review it and make sure that it meets the historic.
Yeah, and I'm totally down to just bring it back to its original, prettiness. I don't know what else to say.
From all
owner of another old house.
I know. Well, we renovated this is our third home in the area that we've done. We did one in Warren, which wasn't that old, it was like 70s. But then we also renovated a house over on Fifth Street that was the old farmhouse from 1925. So I definitely am experienced in the little fun things that pop up in renovating old houses. So I know it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm excited about it.
We appreciate you being here. Jenny, do you want to, you have to open it up for some hearing?
Yeah, does anyone want to speak in favor of the applicant?
I don't have much to say, but
Bias in this, a little bias in this matter.
possibly. I see some of my work there, but just to put on the record that the Museum Association completely supports the applicant because the house is significant to the community, we feel, and it's also on the national district, and it's identified in there. We did more research than had been done at the time and confirmed some things were not right in that, but a lot of things were, really doesn't matter. The house stands alone on its merits today, I think, and where it's located. So we do hope you'll approve it.
And Forth, you're a local artist. I'll just jump in and say in favor, that's a beautiful home. I've admired it for a long time, and I've seen the interior of it. It'd be nice if they could raise it up a little bit and get some space in the downstairs. It's all poured concrete, so they can't really get rid of it easily, but they could raise that house up about 3 feet. They might be able to add another story downstairs, and then probably put a cupola on the top and a widow's walk, 'cause that's what it looks like it needs. And then the movies will come knocking again.
Anyone else in favor? Do we have any neutral?
Walk up. Oh,
Yeah, come on up, Frank.
my back went out, so I'm not going to walk up. It's a simple question. The last time, one, I don't dispute the historical value of this at all. The last time I think this property was mentioned in these chambers was last spring when there was a lady here who was considering buying it. She discussed the fact that there was a problem of some sort with a sewer, septic, something that was going to be an expensive problem.
Yes.
And at that point, someone mentioned, well, maybe we should get it on the historical designations. So my question is, does this benefit one way, or does this lessen? What effect does the designation have on any potential expense and cost of repairs that may be assisted by government grants or anything like that? I don't know. But I just remember when this was brought up, this property was brought up before, that was an issue. I just would like to know what the scoop is.
I'll let Sue speak to the sewer issue, but regarding the designation, I'm not aware of any resources that would be available for sewer repair relating to this. This is simply a requirement to allow the use to continue as a home. So you would have no reason to repair the sewer if you couldn't use it as a home unless you were planning on running it as commercial.
If you do get to use it as a home, then you might have a sewer that works.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the first step.
Just
Yeah.
an inquiry.
And you're correct in your remembering there are some sewer issues that the applicant will have to work through, but it's sort of unrelated to this application.
It's one of many hoops she's having to go through.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else want to speak in neutral testimony? How about in opposition? Hearing none. There's no need for rebuttal. So this matter can return to the table for deliberations and oral decision. So, hearing is closed.
Public hearing.